Today's lecture, as you know, is on local governments. This was Jolie Onodera from CSAC, the California State Association of Counties, obviously focused primarily on the role of counties, the largest of the local governments in terms of geographic size, monetary size, etc., not sheer volume. It's the smallest number, uh, 58, and then over 400 cities and several thousand special districts and all. But it's hard to talk about state government, frankly, let alone federal government, without discussing the role of local governments because they are the closest to the people, of course, and so they play a pretty crucial role in terms of uh, the administering government. Now, they're not technically part of state government, right? We have three levels, sort of like we have three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. We also have three levels of government: federal, state, and local. But the locals are the ones who really are charged with enforcing and implementing a lot of the state's laws. And of course, much of the federal and state funding flow down to local government for expenditure. And so these several thousand local governmental entities end up playing such a large role in carrying out state directives. And they're filled with a few thousand elected and many thousands of appointed officials. And so um, they are the closest to the people. They have the most interaction with our citizens and the delivery of services, of course. So local government is comprised primarily of three types of entities: counties, cities, and special districts. So let's start as we have with the Constitution, because Article 11 of the California Constitution actually sets forth the role of local governments. And it starts, of course, with the highest level, the counties. So in section 1, it says that the state is divided into counties and deems them to be legal subdivisions of the state. I think as the name conjures up, they are, of course, a subpart of the state. This is also where you get, for example, state preemption, right? Uh, because the state is divided into those 58 counties. The legislature reminds me of yesterday's discussion on the judicial branch, that, the fundamental structure of the judicial branch is set forth in the Constitution, but then the legislature is granted powers to really organize and set forth the governance of the judicial branch. It's the same way here in Article 11, in that once the counties are established, it doesn't say how many, for example, right? We know today that there are, what, 58 counties, right? From the North State all the way down to the Mexican border, west to the ocean, and east to the Nevada border. It's because the legislature, by the Constitution in Article 11, Section 1, is granted the authority to basically set up, which they've done in statute, again, in the government code, how counties are formed, how boundary changes are made, etc. Now, the formation through the Constitution of a county requires approval of a majority of those in that affected county. Likewise, any boundary changes requires approval of the governing body of each of the 58 counties. And the county seat, once it's established, cannot be changed unless there's a 2/3 vote of the electors. Sorry, I'm trying to shut my phone off so it's not dinging on me in the background. The legislature is also charged under Section 1 with providing all the powers to the county. Now, the counties are also provided a minimum of 4 elected entities: the sheriff, the district attorney, the assessor for property tax purposes, and the governing body, which is a board of supervisors. Okay. And they are charged, those elected bodies are charged with adopting ordinances to run their respective counties. And so that's basically under Article 11, Section 1, how they're established. Then we go on in Section 2 to cities. And we find similar provision in that the legislature has to prescribe in statute, again, they do it in the government code, for how cities are formed and the powers of those cities. And it requires a majority of voters for a city to be annexed or consolidated into another city. We talked a little bit about, I know Katie on Monday talked about charter versus general cities and counties. I don't honestly remember if Jolie mentioned it. I think she did, but in Article 11, Section 3, we have that designation where a county or a city by majority vote of its citizens can adopt a charter. And that charter can be amended, it can be even repealed if a majority of the voters want to do that. It's interesting to me that the charter for a city or a county is actually published in the state statutes, the codes in the government code. So even though it's not a state law, that's where we find them. And basically, charters are proposed by the governing body, so the city council for cities, of course, or the board of supervisors for one of the 58 counties. An amendment, so the original charter comes from the governing body. However, any amendment or even a proposed repeal can come either from the Board of Supes for the county, the city council for the city, or by local initiative measure, part of direct democracy, right? And in most instances where they are establishing a charter, they generally use a charter commission to do so. Now, in Section 4, it describes in detail what the county what the county charters can provide for. So remember, at both the city and the county levels, we have a charter city or county and a general law city or county, which we'll get into. But again, the Constitution sets forth what can be in those county charters. And the first one is, what is the governing body? Most of them are 5. The city and county of San Francisco is more. The Constitution requires a minimum of 5 members. The county of Los Angeles, their voters adopted Measure G or J recently that will, by I think 2030, expand their board from 5 to 9. That is authorized. It cannot go below 5, but it can be 5 or more. Okay. They can also, those charters can also set forth the compensation and terms and other such things of that governing body. Again, the Board of Supervisors are those folks. Also, an elected sheriff, an elected DA, an elected assessor, and any other officers. So there are some jurisdictions that have more than those three officers that are elected by the county's residents. And again, that's authorized by the Constitution and then set forth in the charter itself. And then, as you can imagine, of course, the charter sets forth the powers and the duties uh, of the body itself, i.e., the Board of Supervisors, as well as all those other county officers, that are designated. That is set forth. Okay. And the charter counties are deemed to have all the powers that are provided to them by the Constitution as well as by statute for counties. Likewise, in the following section, Section 5 of Article 11, guess what? We have city charters. And those city charters are adopted in a similar manner. And any city can do it, but it requires, of course, a vote of the people. Most of the cities are not charter cities, most are general law cities. As I recall, we're about 482 cities. We know the 58 counties, but it's the low 480s cities throughout the state of California within those 58 counties. And the city charter, can provide all the powers and duties and responsibilities, of course, on that local city council body and all. Section 6 says that a county and all the cities within it may consolidate as a charter city and county. That, of course, is in San Francisco. Section 7 says that either a city or a county can make local police, sanitary, and other ordinances, so long as they are not in conflict with general statutory provisions. So that are made statewide by, of course, state statute enacted by the legislature. But otherwise, the cities and counties, have charge over those local provisions. There are certain provisions in section 7.5 that a city, county, or charter city or county cannot do. In section 8, the legislature, so not a decision with the cities and counties, the legislature can have counties perform functions at the request of cities within them. So police services, sanitary, garbage pickup, those types of things are done by statute. Again, these are all found generally in the California government code. But basically, the Constitution allows a city to agree to assume certain functions that a city would otherwise put forth or provide those types of services if the two entities agree to do so. In section 9, it specifies that municipal corporations may be established. What do those municipal corporations do? They generally operate public works, water and power, lighting, transportation services, etc. And so those again are allowed in local jurisdictions, like SMUD here in Sacramento, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, are authorized again by the California Constitution. Section 10 provides some limitations. It says, for example, that a local body can't grant any extra compensation for any of its officers, employees for which they have already agreed to perform those types of services. Section 11 says that the legislature can't delegate to a private person or body to engage in or control or supervise any county or municipal improvements or monies or the authority to levy taxes or perform other municipal functions. What does that mean? Of course, that means that we are specifying that those local jurisdiction, those local municipal functions are actually performed by public entities, i.e. the county or the city, for example. Section 12 says that the legislature sets forth the procedure for enforcing any claims against local jurisdictions and their officers or their employees. Section 14 says that the boundaries of 2 or more counties, those entities cannot levy a property tax unless those property taxes have been approved by majority vote of those peoples. So the citizens of an individual county get to vote on whether or not some additional tax levies on property are acceptable or not from those jurisdictions. Section 15 talks about some local taxes, including the portion of the vehicle license tax and some other things. So those are the main provisions found again in Article 11 of the Constitution. Remember how extensive it is. 32 articles, 320 individual sections within those 32 articles. So we've got an entire article dedicated to local government and of course specifies counties and cities, okay? The last type of entity we have are special districts. The most common ones that you'd be familiar with are the local air districts, like the famous or infamous South Coast Air Quality Management District in LA, Orange County, transportation districts, SAC-RT, SF, LA Metro, etc., right? So getting into the specifics of these local governmental entities, again, the California Constitution refers to our 58 counties as so-called political subdivisions of the state. But even though they are subsidiary, if you will, to the state, as I mentioned at the outset, they're so critical because they run much of government and individual citizens and our society generally, as you can imagine, has most governmental if they do have interaction with the government, most often it's interaction with local government, right? Health and Human Services, law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. So the local governments don't just implement and administer state law, they also have their own lawmaking power. And those are ordinances. So remember, we have the Constitution, we have statutes, we have regulations by executive branch agencies at the state level. At the local level, we have ordinances. Okay, so that's the terminology. It's the same for a county or for a city. They both have the authority to make laws at the local level, and they call those ordinances, and obviously they govern conduct in their respective jurisdiction. So what the city of Sacramento adopts as an ordinance naturally does not apply across the river in the city of West Sacramento. What Sacramento County adopts does not apply to Yolo County, etc. Okay. Just to point out, since we're in a government related course here, one of the critical functions of local government is conducting elections. So I don't know if there was an article today, I think in the SAC-B or maybe Capital Public Radio, that local jurisdictions are getting ready for it hasn't even been called yet, but that they're statewide special election November 4th, right? Who tallies the votes? The county registrar of voters in the 58 counties, right? Who puts forth the polling places and gets people to work at the polling places, et cetera. That's all done at the local level. And many local jurisdictions have political and election laws to govern both political activity, both elections and lobbying. We won't mention too much local lobbying in our second course where we're focused on lobbying. We're primarily looking at it at the state of California, of course, in the legislative and executive branches. But note that a lot of the major jurisdictions, San Diego, LA, Orange County, San Jose, San Francisco, Sacramento, have local election laws. They have, just like at the state level, lobbying registration and disclosure for lobbyists who operate in their cities or sometimes with their local uh, supervisors at the county level. Many have very low contribution limits, as low as $100. Common is 250 or 500, as opposed to the 4,600 or so for state candidates. Um, et cetera, et cetera. I noted yesterday on the judicial branch, and I'll reiterate it, that in Article 2, remember that is Article 11 is local government. Article 2 is voting in direct democracy. That's where they say elections for county, city, school districts, and all the judicial offices are nonpartisan, of course, right? So they're political party affiliations, even if the county supervisor or a candidate for city council is a registered Democrat or a registered Republican or declined to state, none of that's included on the local election ballots. So getting into counties, again, the 58 counties, which encompass the entire geographic boundaries of our state. They primarily provide health and human service programs, law enforcement, property tax assessment, elections. Counties are specifically authorized to have taxing and police powers. The counties are first established, as we noted, in Article 11, Section 1 in our state constitution, and then a significant number of provisions in the California Government Code. And the legislature, in that regard, remember, it's granted the power in Article 11, Section 1, basically to set forth the governance of the counties. And so it's essentially provided again in the government code the powers to provide whether it's health and human services or other such services within their respective county jurisdictions. Um, there's some have noted at the local level, I think Jolie mentioned this briefly, that cities actually have more revenue raising authority under the government code than our 58 counties. My last count, so don't take it as gospel, but my last count was 13 of the 58 counties are charter, meaning, of course, that the remaining 45 are general law counties. They are governed by a minimum 5-member elected board of supervisors. Um, I think that's in all 57 counties. I know that the city and county of San Francisco is an 11-member board. Again, they've consolidated the city and county into one. So they have 11. LA, again, is set to move from 5 to 9 in 2030. So I think the remaining 56 counties have 5. Maybe there's one or two um, that has something above that, but otherwise, and almost all of them are elected by district. There are a handful of counties in which they're elected county-wide. This is the the counties, the boards of supervisors, as well as city councils, in most regards, have not just quasi-legislative and quasi-judicial. You'll remember those from our discussion 2 days ago of executive branch agencies and departments and boards and commissions. Remember having that semi-legislative power, rulemaking, semi-judicial, right? They get to interpret and enforce laws. They also have quasi-executive authority. Okay, so they really operate to some degree with similar powers to our three branches of government, all of those within the Board of Supervisors as sort of the head of it, if you will, like the governor on the flow chart. The executive branch equivalent authority, executive authority, is primarily through the county executive officer, who is usually called the chief administrative officer, or the CAO. That's their main executive. That title may vary amongst the counties, but the role is essentially the same. And the role of the CAO, again, is to act as the chief executive and to oversee the day-to-day operations of county government and the employees who work there. In all the counties, as I mentioned, DAs, assessors, and sheriffs are elected county-wide. The vast majority of the 58 counties also elect their treasurers. And there's a number of other elected officials. So remember, DA, assessor, and sheriff are all specified in the California Constitution. They're in Article 11, but others can designate, the counties can designate other officials like treasurer. 54 of the 58 counties actually have an auditor controller to provide those services. And there are a number of county clerks. Some have clerk assessor roles jointly, but many have a county clerk who is elected on a county-wide basis. Some of the positions within county government, of course, county council, they provide legal services, sort of like a city attorney. Many of them have, health departments, IT, the planning department, of course, for planning functions within the county. They have often, under the sheriff's department, things like probation departments, public defenders, the public works, and some form of a social service department that naturally provides, social services at the local level to the county's citizens. There's just over, turning to cities, there's just over 480 of them. Again, I think it's 482. Haven't looked recently. They are primarily providing services including police, fire, parks and rec, libraries. City government, while they all have city councils, their leadership, their chief executive, can be either an elected or appointed mayor. Okay, and generally, those mayors, the department heads, again, police, fire, library services, etc., may report to the mayor. In other instances where there's a weak mayor, there's a strong city manager who's not elected but appointed by the city council. The city manager is generally viewed as the equivalent of the CAO at the county level, okay? The staff level chief executive of the county, CAO, chief executive at a staff level for the cities or the city managers. Now, just like at the county level, cities in California are either charter or general law cities. The general law cities, which are much more common, not sure if I have the count readily available, but remember, 45 of the 58 counties are general law. The general law cities are like the general law counties. Their powers are set forth in an extensive number of provisions of the California Government Code. There's a whole section dealing with the county governance, and there's a whole set of statutes dealing with city governance. Charter cities, of course, as we've talked about, are those where the voters adopted a charter and they generally have more powers than a general law city and only are bound by laws in the government code that the legislature specifically makes applicable to them. Otherwise, the charter cities, like the charter counties, are generally governed by their charters. And those charters not only have to be established by a vote of the electorate, but to change them, amend them, or even potentially repeal them requires a vote of the electorate. And cities generally have taxing power, law enforcement, zoning over development in their districts, power over the municipal services that are provided, etc. As I noted in the first part, California cities, just like counties, are set forth in Article 11. The cities are in Section 3. And there's a process, as I noted, for creating city government. There are three types of cities. I mentioned the general law and the charter. There's also today one, which is the consolidated city and county. That's in San Francisco, of course. So it's the only one in existence, but there is authority in the government code for other cities and a county, cities within the county, a single county, to consolidate into one if they so desire. The Constitution again sets forth these distinctions between the general law and the charter folks. And the whole idea behind this charter versus general is that the charter county and cities basically were attempting to give them greater autonomy in their own governance, primarily, of course, through the enactment of their local ordinances. And so that's why those charter cities, have more authority than that of the general law cities who are just bound by the provisions in the California Government Code. The third type of local jurisdiction counties, the largest cities, are school districts and special districts. The school districts obviously are the folks who oversee the public education system, K through 14, not the community colleges, not the CS or UC systems. But they are, there's about 1,100 or so, I don't know the exact count, but roughly 1,100 school districts in the state. And these school districts are independent from those counties and the cities. So they're entirely separate. And they're overseen by an elected county board of education. So you have individuals in Sacramento County and the other 58 counties who are elected, generally 5 to 7 members of that elected county board of education. The Board of Education turns around and appoints a superintendent. And the individual 1,100 school districts then are governed by elected school board members. Okay. So the County Board of Education is different than the local elected school board. The elected school board there's roughly 1,100 of those, and those are the ones who are most directly overseeing the individual school districts throughout the 58 counties. We have several different types of school districts, those that are focused entirely on elementary schools and on high schools, etc. There are also what are called, special districts. And I don't know, I've seen numbers from 2,000 to 3,000 special districts. Even the California Special Districts Association, I'm not sure that they've given me a very firm number on how many special districts there are in California, but there are several thousand. They're defined to be an agency of the state for the local performance of governmental or proprietary functions within their limited boundaries. So these special districts provide whatever specialized services they're going to do within their geographic area. And in most instances, they're single purpose districts like energy or transportation. I mean, there's the vector control and air districts, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there are two types of special districts. Yeah, I know I just said there are several thousand of them from transportation to energy, but we define them as being independent or dependent special districts. What's the difference? An independent special district, they have an elected board over them. A dependent special district is one that's governed by the city or county that created the special district. So usually there's city council members. So like here in Sacramento, our city council members actually they don't just sit as a city council member for the city of Sacramento. They actually sit on two, three, four, or five different special districts that are deemed dependent districts. And that's because those city council members, or at the county level, the boards of supervisors, are the ones who are on the board governing that special district. We also have a number of regional boards, such as planning ones, the SCAG, the Southern California Area of Governments, for example. So those regional boards, their members are appointed by usually a combination of city and county officials. They can be the elected officials themselves, but more often than not, they're appointees of the city and county governments. And so those are the regional boards. Again, that's a type of special districts. The other definition, so independent versus dependent. Okay. Independent, they got an elected board overseeing them. Dependent, the local jurisdiction that formed them, the city or the county, or a combination for a regional, are overseen by those elected officials. We have another distinction between the special districts, the second and last one. Enterprise versus non-enterprise. What's the difference? Enterprise essentially means that they operate like a business. So they actually get funding, and that funding is user fees. What's the most common one? Water, sewage, power. Okay. They are funded by fees that are paid by the individuals who are using or receiving those services. Those are enterprise, almost like a business. The non-enterprise are the opposite. That is, they don't get funding from user fees. They just get whatever funding they receive from the local jurisdiction that created them. The two most common special districts, although there are many other different types, and that people are most familiar with, are utility districts like SMUD here in Sacramento, or transit agencies up and down the state. Los Angeles Metro, BART, SAC-RT, et cetera, et cetera. So remember, special districts, independent versus dependent, enterprise versus non-enterprise. Okay. Um, that's basically my overview of local governments. If folks have any questions as it relates to local government, happy to take them.
Chris, it seems like more cities would want to be a charter city. Why such? You said 13 out of 58?
No, that's the number of counties.
Sorry. I'm sorry, not
Yeah.
sorry, I misspoke. You said not county. You said there was 13 charter cities. Did I hear you right? No, how many charter
No,
cities?
no, no, no. 13 charter counties out of the
County. Oh, okay.
58.
Okay.
I don't have the number offhand for well, let me go to the League of Cities. Oh, okay. We have 483 cities. Let's see if they show how many. Sorry, I'm just looking around their
Yep.
website here. According to the league, currently 125 of the 483 are charter.
Okay.
Um, the lower number, I think, just generally um, has been, is there the need to go through the charter process? Most of the functions are set forth in the California Government Code, and they all really have pretty similar, um, governance and responsibilities in terms of providing services, etc. So,
Got
yeah. Others?
I had a quick question about city and county governments combined, like San Francisco. I
Yep.
can't wrap my hand. I can't wrap my head around that one.
Well, b- so the law, what the Constitution for first step sets forth, and then in the government code, is that all of the cities within a county can consolidate into one city and county if they so desire. Um, the city of San Francisco basically, in theory, would have the same geographic boundaries as the county. And so they establish themselves as one entity. In the county of Los Angeles, there are 81, 82 cities. But I guess look, I don't know the exact background of how San Francisco developed, but my understanding is that basically there weren't multiple cities within the geographic boundary of the county, so they combined them all into one,
So
as
there is.
opposed to the neighboring counties, Marin and Alameda and San Jose. I'm sorry, San Mateo and Marin. They all have multiple cities. The city of San Francisco and the county were essentially one and the same.
Got
So
it.
they became
So
the
there is no city of San Francisco and county of San Francisco government. It is just one.
one, yeah, governed
Got it.
by
Okay.
an 11-member board. Yeah,
Okay. That cleared up a lot.
okay. And
I'm
again,
I'm
that's
just
that's authorized in California. It's just not, no one else. The other 57 counties and cities within them have never taken advantage of that. You can probably figure out why, but
I'm just curious about the voting system a little bit. Like, is it all private information? Like, let's say in Madera we're voting for the mayor's seat. Is it
uh-huh.
private or is it going to be public information?
What is?
Voting for mayor, for example.
Well, the voter registration record is how you voted is not.
Yeah, that's what I mean. How I vote. It's not.
No.
And nobody can have access to that.
That is correct. Yes, and voting is secret under the California Constitution. And that applies statewide, whether it's a city, county, voting for a member of Congress, voting for the president, etc. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Just general course things. I was authorized, and last night I hit publish for the course that begins Monday. So everything should be set up there. Just to be aware, there will be some tweaks on the guest lectures. We're swapping the order. Rob's going to go first. Ashley's going to go second. So one will be next week as scheduled. One will be the following. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, we have the budget one. And my two guest lectures or not guest, I guess my lectures are, sandwiched somewhere in there as well. So we'll have 3 guest lectures plus my 2. So we'll have 5. Normally a subject matter gets one guest and one of mine, but I thought there's so much to cover and that you could possibly hear from several folks. So I actually enlisted 2 of my colleagues, good friends that I work regularly with, to do separate ones, and they've been coordinating, and so they won't, be duplicative. They're sort of putting together things that they're going to cover in their individual talks. So, yeah, we already start again Monday, even though technically this class, the first session ends Sunday. Your assignments are due, Monday at 5, as usual. And then your first discussion posts, again, no quiz or essay for a couple of weeks, but you'll still have weekly discussion. So remember, I mentioned yesterday or earlier this week, course 2 has 2 topics, so only 2 essays and 2 quizzes. You'll still have discussion posts each week. Again, sort of like getting together once a week in a classroom setting and having discussions. We do that every week, normally in person, and then maybe have, a midterm and final, blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing. When we go to course 3, and we have 3 topics, then we'll have 3 essays and 3 quizzes. But again, in all 4, you will have weekly, all 6 weeks, your original post, and then feedback or commentary on 2 of your colleagues' posts. So you will have weekly assignments, but only 2 quizzes and 2 essays in the next 6 weeks. So that's what you can look forward to. And don't forget to get your books. It's the practical guide on lobbying and the practical guide on the budget process. And just as with the other ones, you can get either the ebook or the paperback version of it. Okay?
Thank you.
Of course. And as with the others, they'll all be uploaded within 24 hours. So if you want to go back to anything, or whatnot. I know some folks have recently reached out, one on, questions on the course, one on, one on the, lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Anyways, so if there's anything else, let me know. Oh, I know the other student was asking about like career advice, that sort of thing. So if anyone, again, as I mentioned before, I'm happy to do, office hours on course related stuff, but if you want to, talk about careers in government affairs or in government itself, um, any of that stuff, I'm also happy to undertake those as well. Okay. Otherwise, we will talk next week for the first guest lecture on lobbying.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.